We're coming towards the end of the actual rod making process of this series. By the end of this video we should have a blank which has been glued up, and then we're ready to start building the actual fishing rod. So today I'm going to glue the blank up. This is one of the most important parts of the whole process. We need to make sure we glue the blank up nicely with no glue lines visible on the whole blank. To do this, the glue we're going to use is called Aerolite UP4145. It's a very similar glue to Cascamite, which many of you may have used for various woodworking projects in the past. It's a powdered glue which is mixed up with water. It's important to follow the instructions and mix it exactly as per the instructions. I like this glue. I've used it quite a lot in the past in my joinery days. And when I'm building the rods, I find it gives a nice crisp action to the rod. It's waterproof, it's heat proof, which allows us to straighten the blanks after they've been glued together. And it's just a tried and trusted glue. I have used lots of other glues in the past, but I always tend to come back to this. So to start with, I'm going to remove this temporary blinding that I've put on the blank. So if we just unwind this, I'm temporarily going to hold the strips together with just a little bit of masking tape. Put this right on the end. These bits of the blank are going to get cut off eventually, so it doesn't matter if I leave it on really when I glue it together. So I'll just secure it at both ends, right at the very end. Now we'll do the butt section first. I like to use a nice plastic flat surface which is nice and easy to keep clean. You can just wipe it down in between each section of rod that you're gluing up. What we're going to do is going to gently slice the masking tape. Slice it at both ends, being careful not to cut any of the corners off the bamboo strips. And now we can just lie it out straight. And this will make it a lot easier to spread the glue. Now I'm just going to use just a cheap tough brush, and I've got a nice clean one, and I'll just give the strips a wipe down, make sure there's no little bits of sawdust or anything like that trapped in between them. At this stage, if you get any bits of sawdust or anything trapped in between the sections of bamboo when you glue it together, that's what can produce the nasty glue lines that you can see and gaps in the blank, which would mean we have to throw it away after all this effort. So we're pretty meticulous in making sure it's nice and clean. Now with a nice fresh tough brush, I'm just going to liberally coat the glue. I'm going to start at the end and work the way up. I need to make sure we get plenty of glue on all of the strips of the bamboo. And just nice and liberally spread it all the way down. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that when I mixed up this glue, I did actually sieve it through so that there was no lumps or anything left in it. You can get a few little hard lumps in the powdered glue, so after it's been mixed, I like to sieve it, make sure it's nice and smooth. And I'll just work my way down. Now make sure we get all the way down to the bottom. A nice even coating of glue. Once I've given it a nice coating, I like to work my way down to the other end and just gently spread the glue out nice and evenly. Making sure everything's coated. Now we've coated the strips fully in glue. Now I'm going to put them back together. This is where the masking tape helps. It holds the strips in the right position. Make sure they go. We can just gently assemble it. You can see the glue squeezing out of all the joints. Now we'll move it over into the binding machine. Being careful. I'll put this into the binding machine. Now, because it's staying together nicely, I'm just going to remove this piece of masking tape. Now, the way this binding machine works is it's a very simple homemade machine. We've got a cord here, known as the drive cord. This will be wrapped around the rod blank 2 times, and it goes through the guide. And now when I turn it, this will spin the blank. What it also does is adds clamping pressure, so the drive cord is tensioned, so that squeezes the strips together and drives the rod. Now this is a thin pure cotton cord. You want something that's pure cotton so it doesn't stretch. So a nylon thread would stretch, so we use a pure cotton thread, and this is known as the binding thread. So we'll pass this round the blank. Two times, and then we'll tie this off to the blank so that it doesn't move. We just tie it in a couple of simple knots. I like to use some PVC pipes just for the blank to run in. This stops it getting damaged and also stops it flopping around, and it helps them come out nice and tight. So now we've got the drive thread round and the binding thread. We're turning the handle, the blank spins round, and as it does, the binding thread is bound. Keep going. Because of the angle that the drive thread is positioned at, it gently feeds the blank all the way through. So at the moment, putting a layer of binding thread all the way down the blank. You can see the glue being squeezed out between each spline of the bamboo. When I first started making rods, I used to do this process by hand, but as well as being a really messy and horrible job, I found that the tension that you can get is much more consistent with this simple little binding machine. It makes the job a hell of a lot easier. And if you get the tension correct on both the binding thread and the drive cord, I find the blanks come out pretty much dead straight every time, and I don't have to do a lot of straightening at all. So we're coming to the very end of the rod section now. Okay, so we'll cut the binding thread off, leave it. Now we can remove the drive thread. And I like to leave a couple of the strips a little bit longer, and that allows me to just pull the binding thread through to secure it. You'll notice now we've got one consistent layer of thread bound all the way up the length of the rod blank. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a second blank and put another layer of thread going in the opposite direction to give us a crisscross. Now the way we get the thread to go in the opposite direction is by passing this drive cord. Initially I passed it round the front of the blank first, so on this pass I'm going to pass it round the back of the blank first, and 2 times. And we'll just keep a bit of now on the binding thread. I'm going to just, before I start, I'm going to tie myself a little loop in the end, and this will be used to hang the rod up to dry. So I'll just get myself a loop in the end, and now I'll tie this off again. And again, I'll just pass it around twice. That just stops it from slipping at the very start. Again, we'll just tie it off. Now it's started turning. You can see we're now going in the opposite direction, and we're putting a crisscross into the thread. Ideally, putting this second layer on will not only bind it tighter, but it will prevent any twists being put into the rod by the first pass. So again, it's just a simple job, passing it through all the way to the end. We've reached the end again. So again, we'll cut off the binding thread and remove the drive cord. And again, I'll just tuck this loose end in between the strips of bamboo, and that will hold it tight enough. If we remove it, you can see we've got a nice crisscross binding all the way up the rod, and looking down it, that's come out pretty much as straight as you could hope for. Now you can, if you want, remove some of this excess glue with, you can use a damp cloth with the aerolite glue, but prefer to just leave it on, and I'll remove it in the next stage when I start cleaning up the blanks.